It's such an honour to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I'm a Tools of Change newbie, so it's my first time. So I'm Peter Collingridge. I am the co-founder of Enhanced Editions. Enhanced Editions was set up 18 months ago with the singular aim of bringing the iPhone the reading experience that we felt it deserved, with a well-selected list of titles tailor-made for the device. This morning I'm going to talk to you about three main things. First of all, the background that we have as a team that allows us to publish books digitally. Secondly, some stories about the choices and strategic decisions we made when we set up the company. And thirdly, to share with you some of the challenges that we faced along the way that I think will be relevant to you as you decide on your digital strategies for the future. So to our background. As Andrew said, I've worked in the UK trade publishing industry for 12 years, beginning my career at Canongate Books, a small, innovative publisher in Edinburgh, Scotland. I worked in every department of the house there, ending up as an editor before setting up their digital strategy and some successful websites. I was then poached to go to a web and film production company called Screenbase, also in Edinburgh, where I produced over 30 projects for publishers. I left Screenbase in 2005 to set up my own company, Apt Studio. Apt was a design and marketing consultancy which had the view that publishing needed to do better business by embracing technology, and Apt produces strategies, websites, and films for a number of publishers. Effectively, everything that we've done at Apt includes books and the web, and some of the work that we've produced recently includes a website for the controversial author James Fry. We were working on his third novel called Bright Shiny Morning, and we knew that if we were going to successfully market this title, we would have to address the controversy surrounding the veracity of A Million Little Pieces. So we built a site that had James's text on one side and encouraged comments, positive and negative, from the audience on the other side. And as you can see from here, both sides of the debate are very clearly shown. On the other side of the scale, we also produced a self-initiated project called the Bookseer, which was really a bit of a joke. We decided to set this up to see how simple a website we could make that would recommend books to people. You go to the website and the gentleman with the beard asks you the simple question of what was the last book that you read that you enjoyed. You simply plug in the title, give the name of the author, and he comes back with 10 titles from Amazon and Library Thing that he recommends to you. At the other end of the scale, we do produce films as well, and I'm going to show you the first the first 30 seconds or so of a film we produced for HarperCollins. This film was to celebrate the 25th anniversary of their imprint, Fourth Estate, and everything you see here was done in camera. This is a stop frame, 15 frame a second animation that was done over the course of 3 weeks in a small flat in North London where 750 books were chopped up for the making of this film. I hope we've got some sound coming through. So everything we try to do at Apt has originality, wit, creativity, and we hope intelligence to all the work. And because a lot of the team at Apt were behind the setup of Enhanced Editions, we hope that the same is true of that company. For the 12 years that I've been in the publishing industry, I think I've noticed two key observations that I can make. The first is that the value of the book has been driven down by retailers who have aggressively pursued market share by price promotion. The second is that until very recently, impact of digital was very, very, very small amongst the senior executives in the publishing industry. And it's the convergence of these two observations that was at the foundation of Enhanced Editions. What innovations can we make, what digital interventions can we make that will reintroduce value into the book and will encourage readers to pay a premium for books? Enhanced Editions was formed in the space of 3 short phone calls with my co-founders, Rhys Cazenove and Jim Bonner. Rhys is a very talented and creative developer who spent the last 3 years working at Comedy Central here in the US. Jim, however, is a corporate strategy guy who cut his teeth as a financial journalist at Bloomberg in Japan before becoming an expert in change management and working with the global banking industry to work out how to adapt to dramatic changes in their industry. Jim has also consulted with me on a number of projects at Apt and has got a great understanding of the UK publishing industry. Enhanced Editions sits at the centre point of all these skills, and we're a digital publishing house making multimedia books that add depth to the reader's enjoyment of the text. All of our skills come into play when we do this, and it's the skills that we have as a team that I find particularly exciting. These are skills that come from all of the work that we've done over the last 12 years, but they don't look particularly like those skills that you find in a traditional publishing house. Instead, I think we sit somewhere in the middle of a media literate hybrid of being a developer, a consultancy, a marketer, and a vertical publishing house. It just so happens that the skills that we've formulated over the last 12 years happen to be those that were perfectly suited to riding out the challenges and opportunities that we saw when the App Store emerged. So why did we set up Enhanced Editions? Well, in the summer of 2008, when the App Store came out, I blogged about how I thought this was going to be the most exciting new channel for publishers to exploit. Yet I was quite surprised at how slow the UK publishing houses were to see this opportunity, some of them saying, we're publishing houses, we're not software houses. At the same time, Steve Jobs famously said that people don't read anymore. So on one side of the scale, you had publishing houses saying, we're not going to produce books for the iPhone. On the other end of the scale, you had Steve Jobs saying that nobody reads anymore. In the middle of these two things, we saw that the future as it was shaping up for electronic reading was not the future that we imagined for it. E-ink devices, whilst great, were not as compelling as we thought digital should be. They simply rendered text on a page. For us, we were living in the world of the iPhone, a multimedia device which is used to multitasking and a converged understanding of applications. The e-ink devices, however, tended to be monomedia, monotasking, and monochromatic devices, and we just weren't happy with where they were going. In short, we were hungry and impatient to see what the future of the book was going to look like, and we decided, like Alan Kay of Apple, that we would try and invent it ourselves. So what are the decisions that we made along the way? Well, we knew that there was going to be an incursion of competitors. If we were going to be on the iPhone, we thought everybody was going to be moving into this platform as well. We decided that we had to be premium. If Google and Amazon and smaller competitors like Scrollmotion and Stanza were going to move in there, we anticipated that the same slide we saw in the UK retail market would happen online, and the value would be shredded out of the product. Being premium was therefore a strategic necessity for us, but it also took great advantage of our skills that I've talked to you about already. So how do you make a premium book? Well, looking back, I think it's inevitable that all of our skills as multimedia producers got poured into the app that we made, with our experience in multimedia, web, and social media, instinctively creating a hybridized book for a hybrid device. I think Andrew's quotation here sums up what the opportunity of the iPhone is. Given that opportunity, however, it would be really easy to produce a piece of bloated software that had far too much going on. And we knew from years of web development that what you leave out is as important as what you keep in there. It's a fantastic quote from Antoine Saint-Exupéry that I think sums this up perfectly. We also knew from years of working in the publishing industry that a premium experience and good design requires a lightness of touch. You don't notice what a book interface looks like when you're reading it. It's just words on a page. Similarly, we knew that we had to refine and make the interface as intuitive as possible if we were going to succeed with a 21st century interface. So as a result of all of these challenges, we distilled down exactly what our mission was. And it was a publishing mission to solve a publishing problem. How do we bring books to the iPhone? Now, I think this is an editorial question rather than a technology question that was being solved by some of our competitors, which was simply how do you get books onto the iPhone? So with these principles in place, we began sketching out the feature set. And the first feature that we came up with was to use EPUB. Not because it was an industry standard, because 18 months ago it wasn't really the industry standard that it is today, but instead because EPUB is HTML, which shares a great rendering, can be used with WebKit, which is the core rendering engine of the iPhone. That was a simple decision. The next decision was simple to conceptualize, but brain-numbingly hard to put together in technology. We knew that if we were going to throw away the book and rebuild it and think different about it, we wanted to include multimedia capabilities in it. And this meant synchronizing the audiobook to the ebook. We knew that we wanted to allow customers to read the book, listen to it, do both at the same time, swap from one to the other without losing their place. And this was a pretty major advance for us. Our gut feel was that this was an incredible feature, but we had no idea how popular this was going to be from users and how much of an impact it would make. So with all of these features in place, we began a very familiar process of sketching out what the interface would look like, beginning with pen and ink wireframes for how the chapters would be rendered and how the audio would sit on top of that, and refining it, paring back features until we had pixel-perfect layouts of how the book would look. I'd love to say that this process was painless and happened in a matter of weeks, but all told, it was more like a year before we went from having the concept to submitting our first app on the App Store. We talked a lot about the technology, but of course the publishing side of things is really important as well. We knew that really the books that we were going to bring to this title were more important than the features it had and how it was going to look. As publishers, it was all about the writing. It wasn't about content, it was about the writing. And who were we going to partner with to do this? We couldn't afford to pay advances. My first instinct was to go to my former boss of Canongate Books, where I'd worked at my first job, to go to Jamie Bing, who's their managing director and is known as a maverick and innovator within the UK publishing industry. As with any great publishing story, it happened in a pub, and I took Jamie out for lunch in this great pub in West London, and we had many pints of Guinness and oysters, and I pitched the vision to him for enhanced editions. Jamie got it in a flash, and by the end of the day, we had shaken a deal. Well, it wasn't a day, it was more like a lunch. But by the end of the lunch, we'd shaken deals on Nick Cave, David Eagleman, David Simon, the writer of The Wire, the Booker Prize winner Jan Martel, and Barack Obama. I thought I just walked out of there flying on cloud nine. But the vision that we pitched to Jamie that day was identical to the vision that we then launched with 3 months later. And there's a short film I'm going to show you now, which is how we characterize enhanced editions.
In hundreds of years, little has changed about the way we read. Until now. Introducing enhanced editions, the evolution of the book. We've taken everything we love about books and put it in an app. Nick Cave's new novel, The Death of Bunny Munro, is the first of many great titles tailor-made for the iPhone. Lose yourself in the writing, or listen to Nick's definitive reading.
"We are hitting the road," says Bunny, cocking a thumb and jerking it over his shoulder in the general direction of the outside world. "Really?" says the boy, smiling so much that his teeth show. "Really?" says Bunny.
And switch from listening to reading to watching without losing your place.
Bunny manoeuvres the Punto through the weekend traffic and emerges onto the seafront. And with a near swoon, Bunny sees it, the delirious burlesque of summertime unfolding before him.
With a host of other great features, enhanced editions are the future of the book. With bestsellers from Barack Obama, David Eagleman, and The Wire's David Simon soon to follow, The Death of Bunny Munro is now available on the App Store.
It's worth saying that Nick Cave composed the soundtrack for the entire book, and that's where the music's taken from as well. The app came out in September last year, and we were just blown away by the reception that it had from users, from the media, and from the awards that we've won with Bunny Munro. It's simply been, a thrilling and amazing experience for us. So at this point, I think I'd like to change focus a bit and start a conversation about how we think the future of publishing could shape up if our experience with enhanced editions is anything to go by. What do we think the next 3 to 5 years of the publishing industry are going to look like? Well, I don't think anybody in this room doubts that the next few years are going to be difficult and challenging for the publishing industry. They're going to be extremely fast-moving, and doubtless there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. I think it's clear that the change we're now going to see is going to be absolutely monumental and probably irreversible. How we react to this change is what's going to define our industry in the same way that it has that of the music and film industries before us. For all of the reassuring statements that come from the publishing industry that we've learned from the mistakes of the music industry, I'm not actually sure if this is yet true I guess only time will tell. The one thing that we do know about enhanced editions is that, we're a tiny company. We're young, we're hungry, and admittedly, we're a little ambitious. We don't pretend to have all the answers. But we do know that, along with everybody else here, we're extremely passionate about publishing. And I love this quotation from our friend Richard Nash, which characterises the passion that all of us in this room bring to the work that we have. All of us here want and need publishing to survive and thrive. However, we think that publishing needs to change a little bit in order to do that. Perhaps a little disruption is what's called for. Accidentally, disruption is what we got into when we set up Enhanced Editions. Sometimes in the middle of the night when we were working late nights and evenings setting it up, I wondered if we could have grasped more nettles that were happening in the publishing industry. It's like we bundled everything that was problematic in publishing and put it in an app. Scoping and designing and building the app and its supporting infrastructure was hard work. It was also really good fun, but it was second nature to us. The challenges that we had, the challenges that we faced, were where we came up against the traditional structures of the publishing industry. And at times, that was difficult. At times, it was frustrating. These challenges were manifold. There were the structural challenges, such as the makeup of the value chain. There were institutional problems, and of course, rights, pricing, DRM, the general shift to digital, the explosion of growth in reading, and the spectre of disintermediation. If you look at the traditional value chain in publishing, it's not hard to see why we found it challenging, but also why the traction of e-ink devices happened. Publishing is currently a very linear process, and the traditional value chain and the e-ink, the vanilla ebook production value chain reflects this as well. It's in the same way that ebooks mimic the printed book experience and render text on a page, we feel that the value chain for creating and selling them remains the same as well. It's still linear and it's still book-shaped. However, what we did with our apps was decidedly un-book-shaped. We created something that we didn't even know what to call it. Is it an app? Is it an ebook? Is it an enhanced ebook? Is it an enhanced audiobook? To be honest, we still don't know what to describe this as. What we did know is that what we had done had blurred the traditional boundaries between all of the above, between product and media, edition, format, and indeed network and community. Our new direction also blurred the roles in that chain. Readers had to engage with the book in a completely different way, a way that actually we found that they find preferable at times to the written book. Authors had to provide more than just a typed manuscript. They had to provide video, and publishers had to work out how to edit and produce content in a multitude of media, not just in text. You could say that with the e-ink production and value chain, the publishing industry was going in one direction with digital. And it was a direction that it's found progressively easier to get its head around. However, our incursion went off in a different direction and pulls together a whole load of stuff that is really quite hard to get your head around, and we were right at the middle of it. Perhaps you don't agree with what we've done with the book. There's a lot of debate at the moment about whether enhanced books are the emperor's new clothes or indeed the new CD-ROM. But I think wherever we've got to, the idea of rendered text on an e-ink screen is no longer as compelling a view of the future as it was before. At Enhanced Editions, we've just taken a few tiny steps of where we want to take the company. But if you do agree with our vision, then I think that the value chain that we've produced looks dramatically different. For a start, it's no longer a linear process. It's not exactly cyclical, but it's certainly iterative. It contains the potential for communication between all parties, between reader, publisher, retailer, and it also collects valuable insight about how books are being read. I'll be talking about that in an Ignite session later on. Something about what we did captured the imagination. It captured the imagination of readers, it captured the imagination of authors, publishers, agents, and the media. So I guess you could say, in one way, that we created slightly disruptive technology for publishing. And doubtless, disruptive technologies bring with them a load of complicated issues that are frankly to not think about when you think about the perfect storm that publishing is already going through in 2010. Our non-book-shaped book requires rethinking a lot of the ideas that are firmly entrenched within publishing. For example, rights. The traditional role of an agent is to sell as many rights in as many territories to as many partners as possible, whereas our application requires the aggregation of ebook rights, audio rights, and potentially video. Similarly, the editorial skill set required is different to that of a traditional book. We find there's a creative synergy that comes from being able to visualize and edit in multiple media at the same time. And I would encourage editors here today to begin to learn these skills and begin to understand a multitude of media. We also needed to have the skills to bring the application to market, to understand digital marketing, search engine optimization, social media, paid-for search, and the ways of triangulating success between all of these. Now, these are not hard or expensive skills to acquire for a publishing house, but I don't think that they are traditionally nurtured by houses at the moment. I would encourage houses to do as much as they can to start getting their feet wet with as many of these skills as possible. We think that there's the opportunity for digital skills to translate the nuts and bolts into publishing. And we also feel that the same is true. We realised that as a bunch of young digital upstarts, we needed to be tempered by a veteran of the publishing industry who would bring their wisdom and experience to what we do. David Graham, my former boss when I was at Canongate, we hooked up last summer and we started talking about enhanced editions, and we knew that his experience, outlook and reputation would both help us to refine our offer as well as to grow the company successfully. And I'm delighted that David is here with us today at Tools of Change. So our view is that the publishing industry needs to innovate fast in order to justify the place that it currently holds within the value chain and to avoid being disintermediated by other players, because disintermediation is definitely happening. A great example of that is Jamie Oliver's app, which has been a huge success on both sides of the Atlantic. This 3 years ago would have come out as a cookbook. Right now it's come out with Jamie Oliver going straight to an app developer and no publisher in the equation. Similarly, we're reading about more and more authors who are cutting out publishers to contract directly with digital publishers, whether it's Ian McEwan and Rosetta, whether it's Ebook with Anne Rice and Jan Clown Nesbitt, or whether it's Amazon, again, with a former Bloomsbury author. My sense is not that these are the exceptions, but the first wave of a potential flood of authors and agents looking beyond the usual suspects as to the right partners to bring their clients to market. These agents are looking for partners who understand how to create products that consumers will find relevant in an ever-changing media landscape. There's definitely a number of other people like us who are doing digital things faster and better than publishers currently are. And these players are getting the attention of stakeholders who are becoming frustrated with the slow pace of change in publishing. I'd like to share with you a short film from Philip Pullman, who I'm sure needs no introduction to you, author of his Dark Materials, and we're working on an enhanced edition with him at the moment. This is what he says about how it feels to be an author right now.
What I, as an author, feel about this enormous change we're undergoing is it feels as if I'm tied to the front of a runaway train where the driver's just had a heart attack. That's what it feels like. I don't know how fast it's going to go, where it's going to stop, whether it's going to stop suddenly or fly off a precipice or what. Nobody knows. Well, if they do, they haven't told me. However, there are some things going on in which the author, this poor, maligned, ignored, starved, patronised, this poor little creature at the heart of it all, without whom none of this great enterprise, this mighty enterprise, could possibly happen anyway. There are some little corners of this that the author can have a measure of control over. And I'm very interested in this business of enhanced editions, because it does give the writer of the story an opportunity to say something about it, about what they had in mind when they were writing it, about how it came to be put together.
We didn't pay him to say that. I think it's clear that change is being imposed on the publishing industry now, on its current value chain and on its business models. But I do think that it's clear that there is space for a number of new models and new value chains within this new world of publishing. Given what we've said and done, I think there are a number of questions that our experiences imply for the publishing industry. They are, what will your value chain look like in 2013? What skills will you need to manage and succeed in that value chain and new business world? What skills will you not require? And what do you need to do today to begin that? To conclude, when we set up Enhanced Editions, it was out of frustration that neither our clients nor our heroes were thinking differently about the book. Instead, we felt they were coming up with more of the same. Sony Reader, the Kindle, and even iBooks, these technologies all replicate the current experiences, structures, and roles of publishing. With Enhanced Editions, we provided a peek to the future, a peek towards a new direction for publishing, a direction that we're pursuing aggressively, but also experimentally. Our innovation coincided with a sea change in the industry, and our app captured imaginations, I hope, because it was shockingly simple in vision and execution. For the first time that I can remember, publishing is moving incredibly fast, to the point where it's at risk of becoming a spectator sport. There are lots of new entrants in the market offering their own threats and opportunities, and everybody's jockeying for position. Who knows where the industry is going to be in 3 or 4 years' time? Doubtless, parts of the industry will integrate, other parts will disintegrate. It's all down to how we as an industry act collectively. Personally, I relish the opportunity to collaborate with everybody in this room to find out which models and businesses will thrive, to experiment and fail and succeed together. What I'd like to leave you with is a quotation from a poet that I now interpret as a call to action for how publishing should address the next few years. As I see it, a fire has been lit underfoot of publishing, and how we characterise the next few years for publishers could not be better described than by this quotation by Charles Bukowski. What matters most is how well you walk through the fire. Thank you very much.